In this photograph of the Goodyear airship, I really chose to focus in on the gondola section of the airship itself. I wanted to show as much detail as possible. A lot of the equipment on the ground, the gondola itself, some of the sandbags, electronics, hoses, cables, that kind of stuff, the engine pods, and also the lights on the side of the airbag itself. Often when I've seen, as I explained before, photographs of airships, you see sort of like the whole thing, and I wanted to really zero in and kind of see what it's really about. I kind of realized that people don't really know generally, like people like myself, other people don't really know how these things work, and I kind of like to make the idea that it's almost like a tutorial in the sense of what's going on location. If you look closely in the photograph with the lights on the side of the airbag, I feathered the very front of the lights away so they're dark. You can actually see the lights themselves turned on and see the mechanisms that show those lights, and I think that's kind of a neat thing. There is indeed a lot of detail on purpose. I show all this so you kind of get a sense of how it works. The photograph was created in the winter of '06 at the giant airship hangars in Tustin, California. I believe those hangars will be torn down very soon, if not already, so this was sort of my last chance to get them. Originally, when I did the photograph of the first airship, the Ameriquest Soaring Dreams airship, it was such a difficult physical shot to get with the winds going on and jets taking off, all the noise. I vowed to myself, never again photograph airships out in the environs. So when I spoke with Goodyear, I had some ideas and I showed them some photographs and I discussed what might be kind of an option, and they explained that in about 9 months to a year they're going in for service again into one of these giant hangars, and that would be a good time to get a shot if it all worked out with logistics. So I sort of bide my time and wait for the 9 months to a year to pass, and eventually it did, as life does, and went down and looked at the location and did the shot on almost the last night they were actually in the hangar for service. What we actually wound up doing was taking some of the cowlings off, cowlings covers off the engines to put them back down on the ground and kind of sprinkle these things around to make them look neat. Sort of an interesting, two little things that were kind of unusual, that when I was doing the photographs of the airship, unbeknownst to myself, but I could often hear systems turning on and turning off. Pumps would turn on and fans would blow and things would happen. And I didn't quite realize what's happening is that the airship has got an automatic buoyancy system built into the airship. So somebody doesn't have to actually sit there and manipulate the airship to keep it neutrally balanced. The system does it on its own. So as the temperature gets colder or the pressure changes atmospherically, which it does, all the time, the system kicks in to keep the airship just a little bit heavy, so it just sits on that wheel. And every 20 minutes or so it'll kick in and adjust what's happening. And what happens is the airship kind of goes up 3 or 4 inches or comes down 3 or 4 inches. So it's basically constantly moving, but I didn't really realize it because it's happening so slowly. Later on, when I went to the computer to put all my 600 or 700 photographs back together into a single sort of homogeneous image, nothing really lined up. So that made it kind of tricky, but that's okay. Another interesting little observation was that when I exposed the lights on the side of the airship, those big colorful lights on the side of the airbag itself, during that part of the exposures, it was very, very beautiful. We're in a dark hangar, at night. There's not much light, ambient light. So these lights are just glowing orange and yellows and, purples, and they're so beautiful. It lights the whole ground and the walls, and everything around us is bathed with this yellow-orange light. It looks so surrealistic and unbelievable almost. It's so pretty that I realized when I'm putting this photograph back together, if I used that lighting, nobody would believe it. I think these shots are somewhat, maybe a little bit whimsical, fantasyful, or they look sometimes too sharp and unusual and strange. People think they're maybe illustrations or cartoons or computer renderings. If I use that very powerful, striking colored light, nobody would believe it at all. So when I'm putting the shot together, I really pulled back that sort of wow factor to keep it believable. Otherwise, people would not accept it. And I think the point of these shots is to show people how these things work, what's going on. Most people don't really get to stand this close to an airship and see all the little mechanisms and, couplings and handles and things. And I really want to show that, not necessarily have an argument about if it's true or not. So that's kind of where I'm coming from on the photograph.